this past Shabbat, we had a very, very busy Shabbat. We had guests for all 3 meals. And so this past Shabbat, I had 2 very interesting conversations with 2 different Jewish moms, and I wanted to share them with you. So the first conversation I want to tell you about is a conversation I had with my friend Ilana Mizrahi. Maybe you've heard of her. She's a writer for Chabad.org. So she, unfortunately, she just had some sad news in her family that her mother-in-law just passed away in Mexico City. So Ilana she has sort of an interesting personal story. She grew up in California in a family that's not religious, and then she attended Stanford University, and after graduation, then she became religious, and she married a person. So Ilana, is of Ashkenazi background. Her mother is Eastern European, and so then she married somebody, Sephardi from Mexico City, named Solomon, and they're a wonderful couple. Solomon learns Torah full time, and I find them very inspirational as people. They're people who are really very, very dedicated. Like, they give everything to learning Torah and serving Hashem, and they're very inspirational. So Ilana was just telling me about her mother-in-law, so the mother-in-law passed away this past week. So the husband's away, is away at the Shiva, and Ilana was just telling me, like, she was explaining to me that her mother-in-law, who came from such a different background. Her mother-in-law basically was this, Sephardi matriarch of this family with, a husband and 5 sons, but like her whole life was her family and her house. And Ilana was telling me how this woman, like, how everything, what simcha, what incredible joy it brought this woman, to like it's a society where people have maids and cooks to do all of the housework, but it was so important for her to cook for her family, and she cooked everything, and it brought her so much joy that everything in her house be beautiful, and just she was a person who always, like, in her life, like, she always saw the good, like she always said, well, everything's for the best, everything's good. Just an incredibly positive person, despite the hardships, and the family has, faced hardships over the years, quite a few. But this mother, she's had tremendous positive energy, tremendous positive attitude towards life. But I think what really struck me is just a woman, like how a woman, and I think probably for Ilana also, coming from, Stanford University, to all of a sudden have a mother-in-law who profession, like having a profession, having career did not interest her at all. Like, her, and all of her satisfaction, all of her self-fulfillment in life came from her house and from her family. And Ilana was saying, like, she was extremely close with her mother-in-law, and she was saying it was like having a mother-in-law who was a queen. Who everything, like, she would leave the house, to go shopping or to, buy some flowers for the table. But her entire focus, she built this home, and that was, like, her life's purpose. And I think, like, for me, and I assume also for Ilana, like, for people, I didn't grow up exactly like Ilana. I grew up, I would not have been admitted to, I would not have been able to get into Stanford University, even though, like, I would have, like, in my dreams wanted to go there. But like, I grew up in the same way. Like, I think, like, always thinking, that a strong, successful woman has a career. She's a congresswoman or a lawyer or a CEO or a surgeon. It would have never occurred to me. That, that a strong, successful woman, self-fulfilled woman, would be a woman who devotes her entire life, to cooking and, cleaning up and, feeding her family and, hanging out and, like, babysitting for her grandchildren. It would have never occurred to me. Just, like, I think it's so important for me, and I think for a lot of us, it's important for us to learn about women like this, to learn about women like Frida bat Rivka, Zichrona Levacha, Ilana's mother-in-law, who, like, everything for her was her house. And she was a queen, and she was so beautiful, and and for us to strive, even women who are working, women who do have careers, I think it's important for us that that when we are in our houses, that that we feel I'm Eshet Chayil, I'm a queen, I'm doing I am building a Jewish family, just like Frida bat Rivka, Zichronah Levacha. So I wanted to tell another story. So another conversation that I had with a different Jewish mom on Shabbat. So I was talking with a mother of several small children, and she's actually so she was just talking about how the whole week is she gets along, whatever, but Shabbat is like the low point of her week. Shabbat is just terrible for her. Why? Because she's got like her oldest child, I think, is her oldest child is 5. I think she has 3 children under the age of 5, and so she's so like on Shabbat, like there's no break from the kids. And what used to be so important to her before she became a mother, it was so important for her to go to shul, to go to synagogue, and she would pray, and it was like the spiritual highlight of her week was going to shul. And now she can't go to school. She can't go to shul. Her kids make too much noise, and her husband is out for a few hours. There's no way that she can go along with like her newborn 3-year-old and 5-year-old to shul. And so she's home with them, and like they're fighting and making noise, and she's cleaning up after them and feeding them and changing diapers and whatever. And she's just saying like how like what a struggle it is for her. But she told me something wonderful. She told me that once she heard a Hasidic story, and whenever she's feeling down and whenever she's feeling discouraged on Shabbat about not going to shul, this is the story that she tells herself. So it's a story, I believe it was told by the Baal Shem Tov, if not by the Baal Shem Tov, another one of the great Hasidic rabbis of that several hundred of that like original generation of like the beginning of Hasidus. It was told about. That at that point in the history, there were many, there were several very terrible decrees, gzerot, against the Jewish people, and all of a sudden, the decrees were annulled. Why? In the merit of a young boy. So this Rebbe went to go find out who this boy was. What did this boy do? Who was this special boy who annulled all of these terrible decrees? So what they found is what the Rebbe found. The Rebbe found that there was a boy who was living 100 miles from the nearest Jewish community, from the nearest synagogue. And so this boy grew up in a frum home, in a religious home, but his dream was to pray with a minyan. He'd be learning for his whole life that the best place to pray is with a minyan. So it was his bar mitzvah. And he told, before his bar mitzvah, he said, Tati, what I want more than anything is to go pray in a synagogue. I want to go pray with a minyan. I want to pray with a minyan. And the father said, no, we can't, it's not going to happen. We can't, travel far enough for you to go pray with a minyan. It's not going to happen. The boy said, I want to pray with a minyan. The father said, no, I want to pray with a minyan. No, pray with a minyan. No. It wasn't going to happen. So the day of the boy's bar mitzvah, they lived on a farm, and the boy went into his barn. And went to the family barn. He got the animals together. He got, the pony. He brought like the pony and the sheep and the cow and the goose and a few other animals. And he got together 9 other animals, 9 animals to stand with him. And together, they formed a minyan. He believed, and so he said he prayed. He prayed, and he prayed. He said the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, and the animals didn't say Amen. But it said, the Rebbe explains that in heaven, all of the angels were gathered around, and all of them, in the animals' place, who were silent, all the angels called out, Amen. And the merit of that minyan, of that unusual minyan, then all of the decrees were annulled. And my friend said, that's how I feel. She said, I know like Shabbat is supposed to be like the highlight of my week. It's supposed to be like, paradise on earth. But for me, it's really not like that. For me, Shabbat is the hardest day of my week, dealing with like all these babies, and my husband's away in shul for several hours, and then there's been no one to babysit my kids. It's all me on the kids, and they're fighting and need me, and I can't go to shul. The most important thing for me was to always go to shul, and now nothing. It's all, I feel like I'm all the day. I'm just like with physicality and material, and like the material needs of my kids. But she said, but then I think of that, like of my kids, and I remember that boy in his barn. And I know that above me, all of the angels are circling around, and they're calling out, Amen, to every blessing I say. So I want to bless all of you Jewish moms. We should remember in the schut of Frida, Frida bat Rivka, that any inspiration you've gotten from this Peptalk should be an aliyah for her holy neshama. So like any of you moms who have like a hard time, or having a hard time during the week or on Shabbat or whatever, to remember this story, to remember the holy minyan, and to remember, okay, with our own, in our own home/barn, to remember what tremendous nachas, the angels are getting from me and from you and from all of us who are doing what we need to do, who are being Jewish moms in our holy Jewish homes. I want to bless all of you Jewish moms with an amazing week.